Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I have 4 Reddit stories for you guys. All credit goes to the original posters of these stories, and I will link them in the description. I was unaware of the person under my bed. My room had been smelling for weeks. I didn't think much of it because my mom hates spending money on things she doesn't have to. So our septic tank can sometimes be smelled throughout our house. It constantly smells like shit, and it makes me feel sick every day. Now, if I'm not at work, I'm lying in bed getting more queasy with every hour. My mom gets angry at me because she says she needs emotional support during the rough patch she's going through. We found out recently that her live-in boyfriend has been cheating on her in our house. I don't know at what time of the day this had been going on, but I swore to her I had no clue, or at least that I hadn't seen anything. Truth is, he's always been an asshole, and the fact that he could cheat was not a huge surprise. My mom's always been the naive type, so when she let the guy move in after a few days of dating, I wasn't surprised. Apparently, when she found them, she went a little crazy, throwing things, trashing his stuff, punching his mistress, kind of crazy. Now he comes back every so often to yell at her through the front door, but I never know what he's saying because I'm always in bed. The other day, though, my stomach was hurting so much that I decided to stay home. The doorbell rang, I went to get it without realizing it could have been my mom's ex. I didn't answer, but he had already saw me through the front door's window, so it wasn't like I could pretend I wasn't there. He pleaded with me to listen and started throwing off crazy questions. Has your mom mentioned my girlfriend? Do you know where she is? I know she did something. I told him to leave before I called the cops, so after a few moments, he decided to take my words seriously and leave. After that confrontation, my stomach started hurting even more. I tried to go back into bed, but moments before I could climb in, I threw up on my floor, right beside the mattress. The smell was horrible as I hunched over on the floor. I knew I needed to clean the vomit before it made me throw up again, so I grabbed towels and began to soak up the mess. That's when I saw it. Beneath my bed, in the plastic understorage that usually holds my winter clothes, was something that wasn't supposed to be there. It was bright red, and I could see liquid pooling at the bottom. I grabbed the storage container and pulled it out from under my bed. The figure was so mangled that it was hard to tell, but from the matted hair and the gallon of deep red blood at the bottom, I knew it was a woman. A woman shoved into a container, stored under my bed, who I had been sleeping over for who knows how long. I threw up again and again, trying to get the image out of my head, but it's no use. My mother gets home in an hour, and I don't know what to do. She's my mother. I love her. She couldn't have done something like this, right? And if it was her, then why under my bed? My house killed my husband. I need to tell you all about the events that took place in this house that killed my husband. Everything was normal for a few days, until I started seeing things, entities running all over our house. One night I heard it speak to me as I was lying by my husband. Run, 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 they whispered all around me, and I couldn't move or scream. I cried, hoping my husband would see me. I looked through the corner of my eye, but husband wasn't there. I looked forward, and there he is, in clothes, with a broken jaw, missing eyes, pale bluish skin. It was drooling, and his fingers were black. This was not my husband. Run, 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 run. Immediately began to charge, and I was finally able to get up and scream. My husband jumps up, screaming, wondering what happened. I could barely speak, and he had to comfort me the remaining night. Ever since then, I refused to sleep in the house. I slept in our car. My husband decided to take a trip for dinner, and we wouldn't go back home. But when it was home time, I drove around the same area for hours, purposely, avoiding but never leaving. This was our home. I had a nasty feeling about tonight, as if I would not see my husband again. I want to go home, Angel. I'm tired, Jake says exhaustingly. It's built form of a siren. It's dangerous in there. You don't understand, I mumbled incoherently. The only thing dangerous here is the person driving, who has had little to no sleep. Stop the car, I'm going inside. I look at my eyes in the rearview mirror, sunken bags that look purple, almost like bruises, my skin pale. I didn't want him to go. I can't let my husband die in that house. I stop the car and weakly tug on his shirt, forcing him to face me. Please, I begged quietly. Please don't go, Jake. I don't want you to be next, please. I continued to beg, but he looked at me with pity and disgust, forcing my hands off of him, and he gets out of the car. You need a goddamn doctor, Angel. I'm sick of this shit, he says, slamming the doors behind him. I just watched as he walks in. I cried silently, knowing I would be losing the love of my life forever. The door shuts behind him. I step out, running towards the door, banging on it. Jake, come out, please. I'm sorry. No answer. We can go to a hotel, get a new house. Just come out, please. But he didn't listen. Didn't make a sound. I banged on the door, begging, praying, crying. Slowly the door opened by itself. It was dark, no light, showing except for the full moon provided. Jake? I called in a quiet, shaky voice. I told you, he said distant, ominously. The house is fine. Angel, come with me. But that wasn't my Jake. My eyes slowly adjust, seeing a figure that looked like Jake. It was staring at me, but the shadows consumed its face, preventing me from seeing what it looked like. It was drooling, and his fingers were black. It's warm in here. Come on. It didn't sound like him. I knew exactly what this thing was. You're not Jake, I cried silently, taking a few steps back, slowly away from the door. You're not Jake, I yelled, falling backwards as the thing stood at the doorway, with a broken jaw, missing eyes, pale and bluish skin. Angel, come on. He became more aggressive. Get in the house, you fucking bitch. My eyes grew wide. You're acting psychotic. Get in the damn house. And then it made a wailing noise, so loud I could still hear it. While covering my ears, I screamed and ran to my car, driving far away, still hearing that wailing, still seeing Jake's distorted face and body. Jake's dead. The house killed Jake. Anyone who is out there, please, if you see this crooked old house, please do not take it. Do not move in. Do not step inside. I am begging you, strangers, don't do this. Save yourself. There are things out in the snow. Last week, me and my wife decided to go snowshoeing at Alouquin Park. It's really fun exploring the park in the winter because you're allowed to go and camp anywhere. You aren't limited to marked trails, portages, and campsites. We also like to bring our husky because she loves the snow and rolling around in it. The three of us set out for Thompson Lake Road, which borders the far north of the park. It was a little nippy, but we had lots of layers. We made our way across Thompson Lake until we hit a small unnamed creek. We followed it through 3 small ponds and set our bearings towards Wild Goose Lake, which occupies a small valley that's opened up by Louder Creek. We arrived on day 2. When we got there, the sun was setting. We set up camp, started making food, and went to sleep when it was dark. In the middle of the particularly cold night, our dog started growling and woke us up. We just assumed she heard an animal and tried to get her to calm down, but the growling eventually turned to barking. To figure out what was freaking her out, I grabbed my flashlight and poked my head outside the tent. It was snowing, the fluffy type of snow, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I let out a yell to scare off any animals and zipped up the tent. The dog only stopped barking momentarily. I decided I'd put on all my snow gear and poke around. Since I wasn't tired anymore, I bundled up and climbed out of the tent. I shined my flashlight around and just saw snow beyond the light of the flashlight was black. I looked around all sides of the tent and couldn't find anything, until I noticed our sled was missing. I asked my wife where we left it, and she told me to the right of the tent, where I was standing, but it wasn't there. If there were any footprints around it, I trampled over them, so I decided to make small circles around the camp, looking for prints as if I were tracking a deer. There was nothing. My wife decided she'd come out and help me. When she opened the flap of the tent, our dog bolted out and started hopping through the snow towards the frozen lake. I tried to catch up, but she was darting between the trees and my snowshoes were bulky. When she disappeared beyond the light of my flashlight, I lost sight of her completely. We followed her tracks through the woods and across the lake. When we reached the tree line on the other side of the lake, they stopped. Right where they ended, I saw a very small but noticeable red dot on the snow. We were calling out her name, but she wasn't responding. The barking had stopped completely a few minutes earlier. I didn't tell my wife about the red and instead told her we should continue in the morning. It took 10 minutes to convince her we should return to the tent, but I really don't feel safe out there. Neither of us really slept. At 7 a.m. the sun was close to rising and the sky cleared up. So though it was still dark, we could see without our flashlights. We decided we'd get up and continue looking for the dog. We left the campsite and headed to the lake. From the shore, you could just barely see the other side without a flashlight. We had lights on us, but didn't turn them on because our eyes were adjusted to the pre-twilight. That's when we heard it. We heard the hurt whimper of a dog, but it was unnatural. It was coming from the other side. The sound was a noise a dog would make quietly, but it was being broadcasted loud enough to be heard across the lake. This would be like hearing a human whisper at the volume of a yell. We both felt it was unnatural and decided to turn around. We decided it would be best to leave. It took twice as long to snowshoe out of there without a sled. We eventually made it back to our snowmobiles on the road and had to dig them out a bit. As we were driving out, I looked in my mirror, and for a split second I thought I saw a tall human figure at the side of the road behind us. When I turned my head back, I saw nothing but snow. The picture in the hallway. I was never one to judge someone. After all, I was the nicest person I knew. I didn't know many people, but I did occasionally talk to people. It's been about 6 years now. No one knows what actually happened because I figured a mental hospital wouldn't be the way to go. I don't know why I'm posting this, but maybe someone will believe me. Anyway, on with the story. I said I was never one to judge someone, but I didn't mention other things, including the painting in my grandma's house. My grandma wasn't the only one who had bought the photo. It was actually Nanny, my great-grandmother, who is dead now. I don't know where she got it, but the painting was one of the weirder ones of the bunch. The painting was an old one, fixed in a swamp-like setting. The painting consisted of a clothed white silhouette and a naked black silhouette. The white man was pointing at an improvised raft made of a fallen tree, while the black man was slaving away at the wood. The most mysterious thing wasn't the racist painting at all. It was what was in the swamp. In the swamp, it seems like I'm the only one who noticed it. There was a shadow-like man that seemed to have half of his skull brutally bashed in, while still living though. I told my grandparents multiple times, but their eyesight, they couldn't see the evil figure, I guessed. I never liked going to my grandparents' house because of that picture. When there, I usually just played on their old computer, so the only time it bothered me was when I had to walk through the halls to my bedroom. One specific night I woke up at around 2:50 a.m. and had to use the bathroom. Now I knew well enough that the hallway at night was dimly lit and the light was positioned under the picture. It took me almost 20 minutes to muster up the courage. I guess that's what I would describe it as, to go to the bathroom. As I entered the hall, I realized something was wrong though. From former experiences, I knew the walls should look real and be a dimly lit yellow color, but as I looked around, the walls looked blue. The blue walls weren't the only red flag. As I noticed, the hall was now dead end and the painting, that stupid painting that I hated for so long. I'm not a horror movie character, so I had the smart idea to turn around and go back to my room. It's safe to say that if the door was still there, I wouldn't be where I am now. The door was gone. I turned back around, realizing the hallway had gotten shorter while my back was turned. I was fed up with this paranormal stuff. I didn't care if I had to pee in my pants to leave. I wanted just to leave that room. The picture was closer now. I decided it would be the only way out because if you tried to stay, I would fall asleep and the walls might crush me. I slowly crept towards the end of the hallway, thinking life couldn't get much worse. And then it did. I don't know what he was, but whatever he was, he didn't like me. The dark shadow crawled out of the painting at an alarming rate, its seemingly already dead body being dragged around by whatever decided to reanimate it. I looked at it with utter fear. As the moving corpse lunged at me with full force, he tried to scratch at me with his overgrown nails. I punched at his arm in retaliation and surprisingly stopped his attack. While I was watching, though, his other arm, a tentacle-like spike, had drowned itself in my left arm. I screamed, but no sound was made. I wondered for a second if I was in hell, but I figured hell wasn't my grandparents' house. Wherever I was, it wasn't my grandparents' house, though. I dropped to the floor in agonizing pain. I looked at my arm, which was now completely mangled at my elbow, and only hanging by one bone and some strands of muscle. My back was next, getting scratched by its giant nails, adding tears and rips, but I got lucky, as his nails didn't hit the bone. I was now bleeding profusely and trying not to touch my arm. The shadow must have decided to spare me that day, because I closed my eyes briefly and was back in my grandparents' house. After that, I was rushed to the hospital, and by the grace of God, I lived. My arm and back slowly healed, and I relearned how to use my arm. I am typing this out to warn people. Do not trust the shadow in the painting. Thank you for listening. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing and liking to my channel, and I will see you on the next one.